Good evening, parents and carers. Thank you for joining us this evening and welcome to additional members of the community. You are joining us for our first Forest Focus webinar of the 2025-2026 calendar year, which is very exciting for us all. Before I begin this evening on our webinar on safeguarding and child protection, I just want to highlight our next webinar, which will be occurring on Tuesday, the 30th of September, and that will be focused on navigating the teenage years. And it'll be led by a familiar face to Forest, who is Julia Clements, an educational psychologist. So once again, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Some of you may be joining us now live, and I hope you're really promoting this webinar. And for those of you that are watching recorded, then please do let us know if you have any further questions following this webinar. We're not expecting any technical difficulties, but please do bear with us if you encounter any. Excuse me. I just want to reference, this is episode 2. We did have our previous webinar on safeguarding and child protection. And please do go to our Forest Focus YouTube page and under the tab of live, where you can find all of our webinars, but particularly episode 1 that was delivered last year on safeguarding and child protection. So you don't have had to watch that episode, but I just want to signpost that to you. Just a bit of self-care to our parents and carers this evening. We will not be discussing any kind of content that is triggering or anything that involves any high-level CP, child protection involvement or cases, of course. But obviously, we don't know everyone's lived experience. So we really want to practice that self-care and safeguarding. And if you do need to take a moment, grab a tea or coffee, please do. Because obviously, we won't know all of your lived experience in the Forest community, but we just want to highlight that point. I'm going to be speaking to you a little bit this evening as Deputy Head Pastoral and the Designated Safeguarding Lead at Forest. And I'm also then going to pass over to fantastic colleagues who are also part of the safeguarding team. That is Kate Spencer-Ellis, Head of Sixth Form, and she's one of our DDSLs. You'll hear quite a few acronyms this evening, as well as Kate Clark, who's also a Deputy Head in the Prep School, focusing on pupil development and wellbeing, and she's also one of our Deputy Designated Safeguarding Leads. And I just want to thank them in advance for their hard work and time in contributions to this webinar. So this evening, parents and carers, let's look at our agenda. We're going to remind ourselves of the safeguarding child protection terminology, including some key principles in line with key statutory guidance. As I said, I won't be covering everything, just some reminders from, if you do want further details, please do check out that episode 1. We're going to spotlight and celebrate strengths in our safeguarding provision at Forest. And as I alluded to when I was introducing colleagues, it does take a team effort to be able to do that, Forest. We're very proud of that, but the work is never finished. And we're going to be aware of some statutory guidance. And I'm going to really focus on the Keeping Children Safe in Education 2025 updates. And I'm going to signpost and remind parents and carers of the suite of support offerings at Forest across the whole school from 4 to 18. And I want us to together as a team today to develop further understanding of our safeguarding practices through exploring the importance of earliest intervention. And that's when I'm going to hand over to colleagues to look at some case studies there, so you can get really into the heart of Forest safeguarding practice. So we are fortunate enough at Forest to have a large safeguarding team. And I think what I really, really want to point out is, as you can see from the picture, and I don't know how small it is for you there, but I'll just give some headlines. There is a variety of different roles, from medical to compliance to pupil-facing roles, to our head of learning support, including our RSHE lead. And the reason I highlight that, parents and carers, is that working together to safeguard children in 2023 really highlights it's not just the responsibility of one person, but it's the responsibility of us all. And this is just a snapshot of the fantastic team in Forest that support and lead on safeguarding and child protection cases. So we all have a responsibility as Forest linked to our teaching standards, but not one person has a picture of a child's, their picture. And we need to work sensitively and confidentially, but we always work as a team. So I'm very, very grateful to the expertise in this team. Also, we have our senior school office manager, who I'm sure you've had contact with a lot in the coming days since the start of term, and she is also DSL trained, which is fantastic. So what's your responsibilities? You are very, very busy people, but you are our safeguarding partners, okay? And the reason I say that is because you do obviously hold parent and care responsibility, and the statutory guidance, especially keeping children safe in education, that I'll come back to in due course, but it makes clear that safeguarding cannot be achieved by professionals alone. We want to work with you, parents and carers, and you are valued and valid safeguarding partners. Of course, you have a bright primary duty of care for your young people, your children, but you're really best placed to support those early signs of harm. And your trust, your cooperation, your transparency is essential for effective safeguarding systems. That puts the child at the centre of all our decision making. So I also want to highlight is that in safeguarding, as a safeguarding team, we're curious, not judgmental. We are there to really support you, go along on the journey with you. And it's really important. If you can share with us, please, please do. Again, we are curious and we are not judgmental. We have a statutory duty to work together, and we are a partnership, just as we may be with external agencies, GPs, etc. But as parents and carers in school, we are statutory partners, and we want to engage families in those safeguarding processes. Professionals such as ourselves, we can only be effective when we're working in partnership with you. Yeah, because at times that could put the child further at risk. So again, our plea to you as a safeguarding team is to really reach out to us, utilise us, and really create that open and transparent dialogue. As I've alluded to, you may notice those first changes in behaviour, health, or well-being. So your insight at parents and carers, you know best. You know your child best, and we won't take away from that, but it's really vital you passing that on to act quickly and appropriately. Building trust. Sometimes when discussing safeguarding or even child protection information, that can be difficult for us all. But actually, we want to stress the importance of engaging families positively, so you feel supported and not judged. When you are safeguarding partners, you're more likely to work with us as professionals to reduce risks and create safer environment for our young people at Forest. So we thank you in advance for all the commitment you will do in your responsibility as parents and carers to be fantastic safeguarding partners with Forest School. We want to ensure these interventions are family-centred and really want to ensure they're the most effective and child-driven. So let's bring this into everyday practice. I'm hoping some of you may have seen this before in some of our marketing promotion tools, Open Day, etc. But specifically in the senior school, even though this webinar is across 4 to 18 this evening, I just wanted to highlight our pastoral foundations because this really highlights our day-to-day work. So we're going to be focusing on this evening our second pastoral foundation there, highlighted in the box. Every pupil feels safe and secure. And the reason I highlight that is because this is not something just driven by statutory guidance that we have to do. We know that. This is actually embedded in Forest practice, in every day, every interaction. This is not an add-on. This is the responsibility of all, but this is something that lies in all our strategic work. This is not something that, you know, we do yearly. We look at the legislation and we add on to what we're doing into a policy. This is meaningful work, parents and carers, in every interaction with young people. So I'm not going to go spend too long on this because this is covered in episode 1 that I alluded to at the start of the webinar, but I just want to highlight just some reminders. So safeguarding versus child protection. So safeguarding is about promoting the welfare of all children and ensuring they grow up in a safe and healthy environment. Think of that, parents and carers, as the umbrella. Yeah, it's focusing on prevention, preventing harm before it happens. So some examples might be curriculum, what we do in the curriculum, how we educate young people about keeping safe, risky behaviour, staff training, webinars such as this, early intervention, policies. So this is all the really preventative work that we do. Now, child protection, think of it as the handle of the umbrella, parents and carers. That's a specific part of safeguarding, and it deals with children who suffer or likely to suffer significant harm. And you may have heard in episode 1, if you've watched it, reference to Section 17 or Section 47, so children at need and children at risk of immediate harm. So that usually will involve, in all cases, work with external agencies. But this evening, this webinar is going to be focusing on safeguarding practices. So really that preventative work on the ground every day. The statutory guidance, you've got 2 images up there for you, parents and carers. So Keeping Children Safe in Education 2025 and Working Together to Safeguard Children. There are many other guidances that we link for in terms of, there's a recent guidance at the moment about generative AI. I'm going to come back to that. There's a focus on early years and specific work with the early years and safeguarding child protection. There's also guidance on attendance. So more of that will be shared in due course, but that will have specific webinars focused on that. I want to remind you of the 4 R's of safeguarding now. So this is how we work. This is how we field a disclosure, or we field some information that children would pass on to us. So we recognise. We really, really focus on the recognising. And that's not just from the safeguarding team. That is from all our partners. So we focus on recognising. We then respond. We have open questions with young people, from the little ones to the much older. Never why. Why carries a lot of judgment in safeguarding or child protection. So we will respond. We might ask what, when, how, but very open. We let the child speak to us. We ensure it's recorded on our internal database, which you would have heard from episode 1, which is called CPOMS. A lot of schools use CPOMS or other such software. And that's protected. And so we record it on that, and then we refer. And that doesn't always mean, parents and carers, to external agencies, but that may mean to other stakeholders. And also in that refer is our confirmation of actions as a safeguarding team. I've put it in a circle there. It's in a circle because that highlights the work is never finished. And we may actually come back to parts of those when we're responding to a disclosure or responding to a child that is sharing information about themselves or others. So just before I hand and move over onto some of the headlines from our safeguarding practices, we must remember child protection is only a small proportion of our wider safeguarding work that we do. So safeguarding includes identifying concerns as early as possible, that earliest intervention that I'll come back to prevent those concerns escalating. And as I said, we cannot do it alone. We need that information from parents and carers, from staff that teach your children, because that helps us build a much bigger picture to support that child. So I think it's really important that we're proud of our strength and our provision. We had an ISI inspection roughly this time last academic year, and you'll see there some of these words. I won't read them out because they're there in front of you, and you can go back and read them at a later date if you wish, because this is going to be recorded and uploaded. But, you know, strong safeguarding culture. Culture comes from everyone being responsible, all stakeholders, parents and carers, pupil understanding their responsibilities as young as 4, as old as 18, staff, volunteers, etc. It clearly highlights that leadership, which is the safeguarding team, they emphasise that safeguarding is everyone's responsibility. ISI also noted that bullying is rare at Forest, and when incidents do occur, leaders take appropriate prompt action. A wise person once said to me, if there is children, there will be child-on-child abuse. So we're not saying that incidents do not happen at Forest, but what we really need to focus on is how we respond and our timely response to that. It clearly states as well that pupils at Forest, they want to come to trusted adults. They want to speak to us, which is absolutely fantastic in keeping them safe. Look at point 56, pupils feel safe at this school. They are confident that any concerns will be followed up and will be taken seriously and acted upon. We are really, really proud of that. And that work, as I said, will continue. We've got comprehensive filtering and monitoring internet in place, and I'll come back to that. But we are really proud of how young people feel empowered to report problems and how they're responded to in our safeguarding culture. I'm hoping that a lot of you know, parents and carers, that we are working towards the Excellent in Personal Development Award. We're doing this in the senior school to start with, and then we're going to look at that process, hopefully for prep school in due course. But we did stakeholder pupil surveys just before the end of the academic year. over 1,000 pupils in the senior school completed that excellent personal development survey. And look at some of the headlines focused on safeguarding. They feel safe and well cared for. We have made them aware of organisation and signposted support. Again, just as ISI also gathered, they know who to go to if they have a concern or worry. And the bottom two statements is what parents and carers said. My child is safe and well cared for at the school, and the school has given me advice on how to keep my child safe. And the green, parents and carers, represents the highest band of responses. So it's red, which means not achieved, amber, partially achieved, and green, fully met. But again, the work is never done, but we are really, really proud of that in terms of our work on the ground. So I'm just going to pinpoint now, keeping children safe in education, the 2025 updates. There are a few. As a safeguarding team, we were expecting them to be more administratory, more operational. There are a few kind of updates that I'm going to highlight, but actually we feel as a team, and from advice we've got externally and our safeguarding partners outside of Forest, we feel the bigger changes are going to come in due course, potentially later this year. I'm not going to highlight them all this evening, but I just want to highlight that the 4 C's of online safety, I'm going to do a spotlight on that, generative AI and earliest intervention and early help. The other updates for your information, parents and carers, is a strong emphasis on the RSHE statutory guidance, which is coming out in September 2026. There'll be another webinar on that. And also working together to improve school attendance. That is now statutory. Again, we received glowing comments from ISI on our responses to attendance and our processes to do with that. But I'm not going to highlight them in this evening's webinar. I'll do that at a later date. So first of all, the first spotlight, the 4 C's. This was covered in episode 1. 4 C's are, just as a reminder, content, contact, conduct, and commerce. The updates in keeping children safe in education, the statutory guidance we have to follow as a school, specifically focuses on the content. And I'll come to that in a second. But the 4 C's framework, just to give some background on that. So that provides a structured approach, parents and carers, for educators and us working as safeguarding partners to identify and address online safety risks. So by understanding these categories as safeguarding partners, we can all protect children and young people better from the diverse, and we know the diverse dangers that present in the digital world. And we know this is changing constantly. I attended a HMC AI generative webinar yesterday, and they were basically saying this is just the beginning. So we really do need to be really forward thinking with this and work together as a team. But what we need to do with these 4 C's, we need to implement effective strategies based on these, because then we can enhance our safeguarding measures. And we've already done that in our RSHE and PD provision across the prep and senior school. But I want to focus on now the changes. So we've got now the additional changes in the content aspect. And these are disinformation, misinformation, and conspiracy theories. So I think what's important just to look at the definition of these and the associated risks. So disinformation is the deliberate creation and spread of false or misleading content, such as fake news, for example. Misinformation is the unintentional spread of the false or misleading content. And then conspiracy theories is an explanation for events that propose a secret plot by powerful groups or individuals when other or more probable explanations exist. So as an immediate action in the senior school, and I know it will trickle down into age and stage appropriateness of the prep school, we're going to be looking at our PSHE, RSHE curriculum and making sure that this is implemented in there to start educating the young people and children on the risks there. But there'll be more to follow on that. But I just wanted to highlight the updates there. I want to focus on the next spotlight, which is earliest intervention and early help. Keeping Children Safe in Education 2024 did also mention this. It's not a huge update this academic year, but they refer to the importance of it. Now, luckily, we were already one step ahead, as always, at Forest, and earliest intervention is part of our everyday practice. But I just want to do a little bit of myth busting, parents and carers, of kind of earliest intervention and early help. And again, you'll see in our pastoral foundations, it's woven into our practice daily. So let's take earliest intervention. That is tier 1 support. That is us. That is the school. That is excellent pastoral and safeguarding practices. As I refer to, that is in our everyday practices, our everyday conversations, from a classroom teacher interacting, as their year 2 class come in, to a tutor saying good morning, to their year 12. It is all of that. It's our suite of support. It's our team, it's our recognising, and it's that regular contact with our safeguarding partners, which are you. That also involves parents and carers, other stakeholders, such as our fantastic learning support team. I know Maggie Pickwick, and we've got Mel Wright, fantastic. It may also involve our medical team. So that we call that our additional safeguarding partners as well. So we have a duty of care at Forest, and I would say all schools do, to provide earliest intervention. And that is in every single interaction. It's not when a reactive situation happens, like a disclosure. It's in every single interaction. And I'm hoping, parents and carers, you would have experienced that at Forest, and even some new parents and carers that are joining us this evening that maybe have new ones in pre-prep, in early years, as well as in year 7 or even in year 9 and the 6th form. You'll hear more about some excellent case studies from Miss Spencer Ellis and Miss Clark in due course. So the next tier is early help. We call that tier 2. And that's external agency involvement. So a lot of external partners now and boroughs may refer to early help. Waltham Forest may refer to a family lead or family hub. Unfortunately, there's different language in different boroughs, which sometimes makes it a bit tricky, but we help you navigate that as a team. But in most cases, they'll conduct an early help assessment. And in some cases, external agencies at this point, parents and carers, when it's tier 2 early help, they will become the main case lead. And that will be specialised support depending on the child and a mental health need, the family circumstances, or attendance concerns, for example. So that will be involvement with parents and carers as well. So early help and earliest intervention can be provided at any stage in a child's life, from the early years right through to adolescence and beyond. So services can be delivered to parents and carers, children, or whole families. And the reason we say this is because we want to bust some myths, but we also want to normalise. We want to normalise that. I know when I started teaching, I'm sure colleagues on the webinar would also agree, at times, just like mental health, safeguarding or child protection would have a slight taboo with it. We knew it was our responsibility, but it was a bit more of a hush-hush conversation. And we at Forest, just like mental health, we want to normalise this. We want to talk about this openly. Why? In the best interest of the young person. So that tier 2, we're getting to the high end of pastoral care. So it's that regular contact, and that will involve external services. But it's that part of that continuum of support parents and carers. The other spotlight I want to mention is generative AI. I'm not a specialist, a technology specialist in generative AI, and I'm not going to try and pretend to be that this evening. I'm going to speak to you through the role of designated safeguarding lead, and I'm going to refer to keeping children safe in education. And I just want to give some further headlines. So Keeping Children Safe in Education 2025 puts responsibilities on schools, leaders and governors to treat online safety as an interconnected safeguarding theme. They state that we must be responsible for that, and we must be responsible of how we respond to that, which, as you can appreciate, is a very, very large request. And we will always do our utmost to put the forefront of safeguarding at every decision. But also, Keeping Children Safe in Education says we must not make barriers up in terms of the opportunities that technology provides. So we've got to do both. We must be aware of the risks of such technology, and that must always be a priority, but it must not take away from the learning opportunities, and it must not replace valuable relationships between teachers and the young people in our care. So there will be people watching this webinar that have way more knowledge on generative AI than me. So what I'm going to highlight is just some headlines about it. So it uses machine learning models, and it creates new content, to generate outputs that represent human created content. So it's trained parents and carers on massive data sets, books, articles, image coding, etc. But it recognizes those patterns and structures. And then what it does is it generates new original outputs based on the prompts that the user puts in. Now, the safeguarding risk of that, or something to be aware of, is it may not provide results that are comparable with human designed resources. Yeah, it can generate believable content, but we're thinking about actually the human eye on this. So it may not provide those results that are comparable to a human responding. Okay. And so, for example, it can be used to support with essays or questions, but also it's what that young person is putting in, and the risk is what it generates out. And when I went on the HMC conference yesterday, they were basically saying large organizations, filtering and monitoring organization, big firewall organizations, they actually haven't been able to at present also work out their approach to this. So we use Palo Alto for our firewall. We use FastView for our monitoring. So FastView, our monitoring, can report all the data to us as a safeguarding team on what the young people are accessing in terms of AI, generative AI websites. But Palo Alto needs to also decide its response to that. So there'll be ongoing work with the head of IT services, with the executive team at Forest on our response to that. But that's got to be a strategic approach. I'm just highlighting it to you through a safeguarding lens. There'll be further webinars based on that. So without further ado, I've just highlighted the Keeping Children Safe Education updates. I'm now going to hand over to our fantastic head of sixth form, Miss Spencer Ellis, and she's going to do a senior school spotlight on our safeguarding practices at Forest.
Hello, it's lovely to be able to speak to you and perhaps bring a little of what Mrs. Milton has shared to life by talking about what this looks like on the ground in our day-to-day work with pupils and with colleagues, and indeed with parents and carers as well. I'm going to talk through a scenario and talk through the kind of things that we would do as a school in order to support a pupil who had disclosed that they were experiencing feelings of anxiety. Perhaps this had happened more than once, perhaps that they'd had physical symptoms, maybe something that they identified as a panic attack, and what we would do. And obviously, this is around the issue of mental health, and sometimes mental health forms part of our pastoral and safeguarding support. One of the things that I would be really clear is that it is not my role or any of the safeguarding deputies' role to diagnose anything. I'm a teacher, I'm not a mental health professional, but we are really experienced, and that experience can help us to a student to regulate and understand a little bit more about what's happening to them. So here are the kind of things a support plan might look like. So we would certainly signpost to a GP. We know, especially in the sixth form, but elsewhere, students often find it really quite difficult to talk to a GP. And so we would also practice or send them to resources which would help them break the ice and be able to think about what they would say in that short appointment that they might have, especially on the issue of mental health. We would, of course, signpost to digital partners. Sometimes a student will talk to a trusted adult in school, but sometimes, for really good reasons, they won't, or the trusted adult isn't available. So the digital partners are one way of dealing with feelings of anxiety. We might also invite the student to make an appointment with Place to Be. We're not trying to pathologize anxiety and make it feel like they've got something wrong with them, but they might find it really, really valuable to talk to someone who's a real expert in helping them find strategies to cope with difficult and strong emotions. We might explore the feelings of anxiety using a coaching approach, talk about what it might feel like in their body, the kind of thoughts they have. We might think about what it is that perhaps triggers them. And we'd also might provide some education around worry and stress. For example, not all worry and stress is bad. Sometimes it motivates us. And also thinking about how in the past they've coped with worry and stress, and talk about how we're sort of wired to manage it. We would explore healthy and unhealthy coping strategies, and also look at identifying and alleviating triggers. We don't necessarily always want to bubble wrap and insulate pupils from everything that happens in the world around them, but especially if a student is experiencing acute feelings of anxiety, we want to reduce the temperature as they navigate them. We might identify trusted adults that they could go to talk to. We might support the students to find their own solutions, especially when working with older students. We often co-construct support plans so that their voice sings loud and clear. We also would make sure that that student continues to be supported in taking risks, and we would make sure we celebrate that, especially when a student is risk averse or is experiencing really strong feelings when they take risks. It's really important not to suggest that they should never ever take a risk. Especially if a student had disclosed acute anxiety, we would make sure that we checked in. We have systems to ensure that we don't just have one meeting with the student, talk about support plans, and then just send them on their way. We might engage them with mindfulness strategies, and we might engage with parents and carers. Typically, especially in the sixth form, pupils are not particularly keen to have their parents and carers involved for all sorts of reasons. But actually, one of the pieces of education I do most often with the sixth form is the fact that the parents and carers want to know and often can provide really valuable support. So, what I would really like to just say is that our support comes in lots of different forms. It's a really individualized approach, and it's an approach which puts the pupil in their care. It's not about, unfortunately, removing every single barrier that they might have to a perfect and smooth existence, because we don't have that kind of ability, but it is about giving them tools which will last them far beyond the white gates. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague in the prep school, Mrs. Kate Clark, who's going to look at this topic from a prep school perspective. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you. I'd like to start by saying how nice it is to be here from a whole school point of view. An area that I'd like to concentrate on, problems with the slides, which is a common theme in the prep school, is when safeguarding concerns arise from generally what children say about life at home, which very much I feel walks hand in hand with our school's ethos of early intervention, early help for families. I'm sure it won't be a surprise to many parents watching that it's very common for our primary aged pupils to share snippets of life at home and what goes on at home, sometimes without realizing its significance for us at school. So as staff, I think what we do in the prep school here is we listen very carefully and absolutely consider the context of what we're hearing and what we're listening to. Our youngest pupils are only 4 years old. It's their very first time at school, and some of them have limited emotional literacy or even limited language. So listening is absolutely key. It's important to note that we're bound by exactly the same statutory guidance as the senior school, and that we were exposed to disclosures and conversations in exactly the same way, but with perhaps wider consideration of who it is that is talking to us at the time. But we do have absolutely the same duty of care to respond in the same way. What this looks like for us is, very often a child could mention arguments at home, parents shouting, possibly hint at carer type duties, looking after younger siblings, older siblings, if parents are not able to. They may express worries very often about a parent or a carer. And generally we take comments that are about responsibilities at home for their age very seriously. You know, for example, I make my own supper because mummy's asleep. We would always seek guidance and advice from external agencies, depending on what it is we're being told by the child and their age. And as Mrs. Milton said, all information for us is so important, all information in the conversation, because it contains indicators that should be and are recognised by the prep school staff, responded to appropriately. Here's those 4 R's: recognised, responded to appropriately, recorded on CPOMs, and investigated, and if necessary, then referred. Asking the child, as Mrs. Milton said, the appropriate questions, never the why, because especially with children of our age, that's you know, atypically going to incur feelings of guilt that are not that's absolutely not what we want to achieve. And when we capture these comments, I suppose, and when we're doing this recording and when we're doing the talking and the listening, we begin to see patterns. And if one child is repeatedly talking about either conflict at home or, you know, the other examples that I gave, the key point here is that we can never dismiss what the children say as a throwaway comment. We have to take it in the context that it is, and know that our youngest children often communicate disclosures or concerns or anxieties through very casual comments in the playground, at lunch. Part of our role, because of the age of our children, is to notice and to always be observant. We are very lucky in the prep school to have the ratios that we do. Our head was talking today about the fact that we have 1 adult to 7 children as our ratios at the moment, and that means that we know our children and we know our families very, very well, meaning we can respond rapidly when we know there's a problem. And, you know, my role and the other DSL in the prep school, we will always follow up with the safeguarding team colleagues. We work very closely together. Everybody's always on hand for help and advice, with Mrs. Milton at the helm and external agencies, as we said before. So I think being transparent with our parents, walking hand in hand with our parents, knowing our parents really well, not just by name, but by face in the playground, and talking to everybody as we're able to do, means that we really can walk hand in hand and have a child-centred approach to safeguarding in the prep school.
Thank you so much to Miss Spencer, Alice, and Mrs. Clark. That was absolutely fantastic. And I know if I was a parent and carer at Forest, I would feel really reassured. So thank you so much. So I just wanted to highlight parents and carers before we head off this evening, and thank you to those that have joined us. I do hope you got home okay from whatever you're doing, given the most recent strikes. But the suite of support at Forest, it would be remiss of us to not highlight this, and this goes across ages 4 to 18, so all different types of support there. So as Mrs. Clark highlighted, they have got their pastoral and safeguarding team. And in senior school, we reference core team, which is tutor, head of house, head of section. In prep school, you have that class teacher. You will have your deputy heads, Miss Clark, who you've heard from this evening. So you've got a wider body of people. You will have the learning support team. We have our fantastic Place to Be service. I think it's very, very rare to have on-site counselling service 5 days a week. And for that, we are eternally grateful. And I know the young people speak so highly of Place to Be. Like I said, from age 4 to 18, that also came through the ISI inspectors. In the senior school, we have an online reporting film. So our head of sixth form, Miss Spence Ellis, did highlight that we pride ourselves that children want to come and speak to us, which is fantastic. Doesn't always happen in all schools, but also we understand that sometimes they want to. So we've got that online reporting form in the senior school, and I know for a fact they have a post box. It is super cute and fantastic in the prep school, where they can put their notes in there that goes to the safeguarding team and place to be. We have the Wellbeing Hub. If there's new parents and carers listening this evening, further details will follow regarding that from myself for you to sign up. There is a plethora of different resources there. Again, fantastic opportunities for parents, carers, just to have a little look. I would really, really signpost their A to Z of wellbeing. We use it in our staff training in the prep and senior school. It's fantastic. We also have our digital partners. That's mostly, again, used by our senior school pupils if they don't want to reach out to a trusted adult. And actually a further development of that is we are going to be looking at a child safeguarding booklet and help guide for age and stage appropriate from 4 to 18. So more to come on that. And I think it would be, again, remiss of us to not highlight and say it very boldly that as safeguarding partners, that you have access to the NSPCC whistleblowing advice line. We would hope, parents and carers, that first and foremost, like Mrs. Clark said, you would come and speak to us, and we have that open and transparent dialogue regarding processes, our responses. But if you don't want to do that, you should feel empowered that you can, if you want to, contact the NSPCC whistleblowing advice line. But we really do promote you come and speak to us first. As we've said, the work is never finished. So it's just some headlines for you while you're listening today and thinking, well, what is next if the work is never finished, Mrs. Milton? So we want to continue that open and honest dialogue. You are that collaborative safeguarding partners. I'm not going to apologise for keep saying it. We're going to keep banging that drum. It's ongoing work, and the child is always the centre of decision making. So that's ongoing dialogue with home and school. As all schools will be doing in best practice, we'll be updating and reviewing policies and processes in line with key statutory guidance, specifically keeping children safe in Education 2025. Working together to safeguard children hasn't been updated since 2023, and I'm pleading the government to also update some guidance on anti-bullying as well. That hasn't been updated for a while as well. So fingers crossed, more to come on that. As I've alluded to, we'll be doing the pupil and child safeguarding guide. More to come on that. We're just reviewing it as a safeguarding team. We want to get some pupil voice on that. Ongoing filtering and monitoring. I meet with our head of IT services every 4 weeks. And that is in place. That's been in place for the last few years. Thanks to our previous DSL, Mr. Jeff Kane. So fantastic work in that area. And we will continue with that ongoing work. Education. We have got a fabulous head of RSHE in both the prep and senior school who work collaboratively as one school. And we have deputy heads of section, as you've heard from this evening, but also a deputy head of the prep school that focuses on personal development. So that is how much commitment we have to our RSHE and personal development curriculum. And just in terms of language, you may hear in other schools it referred to as PSHEE or PSHE. We refer to it mostly as personal development, but that's all of that feeding in. We have a dedicated curriculum woven from age 4 up to age 18, and we are hugely proud of that. Ongoing staff training. So all staff had their refresher safeguarding and child protection training, statutory responsibility at the start of this academic year. And I'll be meeting with all staff on the 30th of September to again do some further training and updates on those spotlights that I highlighted to you this evening. We will be doing more parent and carer webinars, spotlighting these different safeguarding themes and topics. Again, can I please signpost the previous webinars we've done? We have done some on online safety, specifically risky behaviour. We have done one on initial safeguarding and child protection. Please do have a look at those. And if there are further ones that you have expertise on, or you have really great contacts in the field of these areas, please do email me directly. But their further information will be on that, and there'll be further information on one specifically about generative AI. I'll be discussing more and leading it with the executive team and the safeguarding team on our online safeguarding strategy. Fantastic work has been done in that area, but we want to really shout from the top of the houses or the top of the prep school, because that's got a great view regarding this. And we want to really audit and review our current processes to reassure you as parents and carers. You are busy people and you've probably got supper to make and children to put to bed. So thank you for joining myself, Miss Spencer Ellis, Head of Sixth Form, and Mrs. Clark, Deputy Head in the Prep School Personal Development, members of the safeguarding team. There'll be many other people behind the scenes that are contributing to the safety of your children at Forest. And for them, I publicly thank you and for all your hard work. Parents, let's continue to work together. I wish you a safe and enjoyable evening, and please do reach out if there is anything at all. Thank you so much.